Hello and welcome to the collapse experiment. Leaving a toxic work environment. I know a little something about that. So, back in 2019, yes, pre-2020. Oh, what do they call that? BC, before COVID. Yeah, I was working at a place where I was accused of a few things, but they summarized it into SA, which, or, no, SH. It was SH. Later, they tried to add some SA to it, and that didn't really fly. But this whole process went on for over a month, which was interesting because at one point my union rep stepped in and said, whoa, like, you guys got to have this wrapped up in 2 weeks, and if you don't, everything is dropped. That's what's in the book. And then HR came back and said, well, it's in our employee handbook, but it's not in the union contract. So they basically gave themselves the go-ahead to wave away that thing that was in the employee handbook that everyone is supposed to follow. Now, if we're going to give ourselves an extension on this, I'm sorry, but if you can't prove something in like 2 weeks, and then the stuff you come back with can't even be used in court. So in the end, to summarize the whole ordeal, in the end they finally said that couldn't really find anything. However, we're going to give you a written warning, blah, blah, blah. It was basically like a negotiation. So, written warning, basically telling me like, hey, don't ever do this thing that you've never done before ever again. And then for her, that was supposed to be the acknowledgement of like, we hear you. This is what we're doing. We did something. So then the very next day, she goes to HR and she files SA accusations against a security guard. The very next day. Think of the logistics of this. So what happened the day that I received my written warning is that I get that they tell me you're going to continue working in the basement for a while until we think that the smoke has cleared. I'll go into that a little bit further in this video. So what she does when they tell her as to what their findings were, she proceeds to go into the main portion of the building where the public is and is wailing and crying and throwing herself on the floor, throwing a temper tantrum. You've seen those kids at the store. I want a Barbie. I want a Barbie. Yeah, and you're wondering why doesn't mom just beat his ass? So security comes out and they end up removing her from the public area. She's purposely creating a scene. Keep in mind, this space has no less than a dozen cameras, okay? So she accuses one of the 2 security guards of SA and she goes to HR HR immediately goes to his boss. His boss immediately starts doing his investigation because he's a moron and a douchebag. I don't know this guy personally, but I know him well enough from the 3 years that I worked there to know he's a douchebag. Does like no investigation whatsoever. And so this security guard starts being accused of doing this thing. Keep in mind, the same security guard was a former cop who thought he was getting away from all this political bullshit. Well then, once that came out, there was a conversation I had with my union rep at one point in time where I told him, hey, she's got a whole list of people that she wants to do this to. And I gave him the list of the people that I knew that she had an axe to grind with. Which, of course, me being a dummy, didn't know I was on the list. But for some reason, she shared this information with me at one point in time. In which case, I shared this same list with the union. And then once it came out, so-and-so is being accused of doing this thing. His lights went off and was like, he was on the list. So my union rep goes to HR and says, stop this immediately. This is what's going on. Tells the HR woman about the conversation that we had and the people that I listed and how this security guard is the next on her list. Which sure as shit is what she did the next day after my stuff was settled. I'm not even gonna say dropped. They didn't drop it. It was never dropped. That's part of being in a toxic work environment. So what ends up happening is they contact the security guard's boss. They have the same conversation with him. They go through the camera footage. Finally, they go through the camera footage. Nothing was done wrong. And that was when they called her into the office and said, you are done as of today. And security got to escort her out again. Now you think everything would be done and settled after that, right? Oh no. Nope. The people that this girl had been friends with, and she had worked at this place for over a decade. So she pretty much knew everybody that was there. Nope, those people, even after that, continued to take her side on basically every situation she ever brought up. Even though she's not working there anymore. So I got to keep my job, which was good because my wife was pregnant with our second kid at the time, which had I lost that insurance, which they had really good insurance. It's pretty much on par with the insurance I have today with my evening job, which means you really don't get a bill. So still had my insurance, couldn't leave. And for the next year, it was a toxic work environment. Like, I would walk into a certain part of the building as the maintenance guy, as one of the maintenance crew. Like, if I got called to a certain area, I respond and do my job. But no, you're out somewhere and you can hear one of the employees talking to either another employee or a patron of the facility talking shit about me, which I'm pretty sure is textbook toxic work environment, right? spreading gossip, talking shit about another employee within ear range. That was the part where they got really fucking cocky on a bunch of shit. And this continued on. Like, people that I had talked to for years before that no longer would talk to me. Conversations were awkward, even if it was work related, which everything at that point was strictly work related. But the part that sucked was I'm stuck there for 8 hours dealing with shitty people. And even after everything was said and done, my own boss would bring stuff up. He would just make random comments at our shift change meeting, which was directed towards me. And I would just give him this look, and he'd give me this glare back. And I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me right now? So I was even getting shit from my boss. So then 2020 happened, and to shorten that series of events, I was stuck at home. They were still paying people. They do things like that when it's not their money, right? It's taxpayer money, so they're just like, hey, we're gonna do this thing for our employees because it'll make us look good to the public and to our employees so we don't lose any staff. And I had to do these Zoom meetings. I'm just sitting there. I think a lot of people just kind of like turned it on. There's no camera and they just walk away from the computer. But I'm sitting there and they did the whole like, we're going to be racist thing. And we had these positionings opening up in this committee. And if you are a certain sex and a certain skin color, you can apply. Everybody else, forget about it. I was like, oh, okay. And at this point, I was already miserable, right? Like the year before 2020, I was shopping for cabins, affordable cabins in northern Michigan. Now I'd found a couple. There's one by Sheboygan and there's a couple in the UP. I didn't know if I really wanted to drive that far, but I was already shopping. And then once 2020 happened, my wife, she starts looking online, and we both kept having the same house popping up on both of our feeds. That's the one we ended up buying. And when we were doing the whole debate as to like, should we really just like move? And I'm like, I don't know about you, but I'm fucking miserable at my job. And she was at a job that was not particularly pleasant towards her as well. They just kind of like, it was one of those positions that they just needed filled, but there was, let's just say she wasn't happy with her job either. All right. Before I go into another story. But the thing to keep in mind is that, guys, and most of you out there listening to this channel are guys, once you are accused at a workplace, even when you are cleared, right? Or they come to some type of stupid compromise, even when that happens, even when she gets fired for doing something else, and for some reason, I don't know, but the very next day, after my stuff didn't go the way she thought it was going to go, she pulls that shit, and HR's like, these are not connected. Uh-huh. Tell that to the security guard that got to keep his job. He ended up quitting right away after that. I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall, like, fuck this place. Don't really blame him. I really hope he didn't go back into law enforcement with what happened the year after that. But no, like once you have one accusation, you now have the scarlet letter on you. Like years later, that thing will still come up. And if you're accused again, HR is basically going to say like, oh, we have a problem guy. And they're going to look at it solely from the perspective of not trying to figure out what the truth is, but to find you guilty and get rid of you. That's what that comes down to. So at that point, even though you're not guilty, even though they found fault in her story, and there's no repercussions for the false accusations, by the way. Like now you're both stuck in a workplace where she has to try to prove that she was right, even when it's proven that she was wrong to begin with. But that's going to continue on. Like she's going to have that axe to grind against you from that point forward. HR might even, because there's this like unwritten rule of like, we have to take every accusation seriously, right? Because if they don't, they're open to lawsuit, which again is total bullshit, because there's no repercussions for false accusations. There's no false accusations against grape accusations. I think every woman that files grape charges against the guy with zero evidence or evidence to the contrary being found later on, we found these text messages where you're clearly in a consensual relationship. She should get the sentence of whatever he would have gotten for that charge. I'm sorry. You don't have a license to go around and ruin people's lives. So yeah, it's that is a toxic workplace. Once that happens, and here's the thing, there's two ways you can look at it. One, you can leave there because things will never get better for you. You'll be passed up for any type of promotions because this will be on your record. Not that you were found guilty, but that you were accused. Kind of sounds like communism, doesn't it? So basically, any future at that company is screwed after that point. So you're better off moving on. But then you think to yourself, well, isn't that just acknowledging or coming across as like I did something, therefore I have to go somewhere else and start over? But they're going to think like, oh, I'm going to do it again. No. And that's clearly not the right way to think of it, because why the F do you give a shit about what your former coworkers think of you? How many of those people are you going to stay in contact with once you go on to some other place? None. Because clearly, even if you have friends at that place, guess what? The other people who think that you're guilty of whatever the accusations are going to be talking shit to them about you. And eventually, because they have to play nicey nice with the people that they're still working with, most likely because they're a bunch of pussies, they're eventually going to turn on you anyways, and you're not going to be talking to them in a year or two after you move on. You got to take care of yourself. You definitely have to get out of that freaking environment. And it was brought up in another video of like, don't think companies don't talk to each other. Like, word will get out about what happened at your former employer. At that point, it's just gossip. Your current coworkers aren't going to know the coworkers from the other place. And it doesn't really matter. Somebody will jot down some little note somewhere about like, I heard Bob might have done some fill in the blank. As long as you don't have anything like that come up at your new job, it's not really going to matter. So that's about it. Yeah. Hate to say it, once you're accused, there's no clearing yourself. You're better off just moving on. Keep on typing.